Hello everyone, welcome back to Throwing in the Towel. Each week I dive deep into the NFL season and make the tough call on which team it's time to throw in the towel on. Whether it's due to a string of injuries, a losing streak, or just plain bad luck, some teams just don't have what it takes to make it to the postseason. And in this week 8 episode, I will be throwing in the towel on team number 8. So make sure you stay tuned until the end to see who team number 8 is this week. And also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more weekly NFL insights. Let's get started, per usual, in the AFC East, which has the Dolphins and the Jets represented this week. And there were plenty of things expected of the Aaron Rodgers-led Jets in 2024. 8 weeks in, being last place in the AFC East, most assuredly was not one of them. The 2024 Jets might remind you of the 2011 Dream Team Philadelphia Eagles. Like that Eagles team 13 years ago, the Jets have a collection of marquee names, but they're not a good team and will likely miss the playoffs with a non-winning record. The Jets are 2-6 and have lost 5 consecutive games. Notably, they have not won a game since they fired their head coach Robert Saleh. And honestly, the way it looks right now, the general manager Joe Douglas, he might be out the door at the end of the season as well too. And for the Dolphins, the good news for the Dolphins is that they got their quarterback back. Tua Tagovailoa is back, and they scored the most points of their season, which is, I think, in case there was any doubt that he wasn't the franchise guy, I think that should tell you right there. The bad news is that Miami didn't score as many points as Arizona, hence the reason why they lost. And at 2-5, the Dolphins' chances of making the playoffs are slowly, or I should say, not slowly, are rapidly dwindling. That's a better way to look at it. Tua played well in his first game back, but he didn't do enough to get the Dolphins back in the win column. If the Dolphins intend to make a midseason run for a wild card spot, they have little room for error. AFC North, we have the Bengals and the Ravens this week, and the Bengals entered the 2024 season with high expectations, which I think they enter most seasons with high expectations, and despite yet another slow start, a win over the Eagles would have gotten them back to 500 for the season. That didn't happen, and also didn't even come close to happening. The question now is beginning to become that if Cincinnati continues stacking losses, will Zach Taylor survive as their head coach? Performances like Week 8 don't help his chances, and the reality appears to be that this year just isn't going to be it for the Bengals, that this is going to be a down year for the Bengals, and it might be one that takes down Zach Taylor as the head coach. And for the Ravens, there's no denying that this is an explosive and exciting team on offense, whether it's Lamar Jackson extending plays and throwing accurate passes, or Derrick Henry running people over like only Derrick Henry does. But there's also no denying that this team's secondary is officially a problem. Entering Week 8, the Ravens were dead last in league pass defense, and they played like it against a team starting a backup quarterback with a depleted wideout corpse. Yeah, tough loss to the Browns right there. Really no excuse right there, and I guess the Ravens decided to do something about it. Not the secondary, the offense. They want to trade it for Deontay Johnson. That's a pretty good get for them right there too. I mean, why not add another weapon to the offense? Why not? AFC South, we have a lone representative this week, that being the Indianapolis Colts, and this team might have an Anthony Richardson problem. After getting swept by the Texans, the AFC South title appears to have been reclaimed by the Texans. We're looking at back-to-back division champs here. Excuse me. Richardson's all-or-nothing approach hinders the Colts' offense, but the alternative is placing Joe Flacco in the lineup and hoping to achieve mediocrity. The Colts can continue to insist that Richardson is their guy at quarterback, but the more he plays, the less he looks like a franchise quarterback, especially when he checks himself out of a game when he's tired. And yeah, that was just... I'm not going to get too much into that one too. I think that's been talked about enough. But what I will say is that's a rough look. I mean, honestly, if you're tired and you're checking yourself out, fine. Keep that to yourself, though. Keep it to yourself. And it appears that the Colts are at least tired of watching Anthony Richardson play, so they are benching him for at least Week 9. So it will be Joe Flacco starting against the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. So moving on to the AFC West, no representatives this week. The Chiefs, Chargers, and Broncos all got wins. The towel was thrown on the Raiders Was it last? I think it was last week. No, it wasn't last week. It was a couple weeks ago. Either way, though, the AFC West is probably the most intriguing division in the AFC because the three teams that I mentioned that won, they're all in the playoffs, or at least they all are in playoff contention right now. I think the Broncos hold the 5 seed and the Chargers hold the 7 seed at the moment. Very interesting right there. So now we move on to division representatives. Let me not knock my soda over. So for division representatives, we have the Jets representing the East, the Bengals representing the North, and the Colts obviously in the South. Of these three teams, who represents the AFC this week? Well, if you look through these three teams, you probably think it's the New York Jets, and you would be correct. The New York Jets are, as of Week 8, the worst team in the AFC. Just a brutal loss to the Patriots, too, in a game that you probably should have won. Now we move on to the NFC side of things, and we start per usual in the NFC East with a lone representative from the Lone Star State, the Dallas Cowboys. And it wasn't supposed to be like this with the Cowboys. This was a team that was supposed to repeat as NFC East champions, make a deep playoff run, win Jerry Jones another Super Bowl ring. Instead, the Cowboys are 3-4, and apparently looking like afterthoughts in the NFC. They've been ravaged by injuries on defense, and they still can't run the ball on offense. It's more likely than not they will miss the postseason altogether than win a playoff game, which honestly, I will admit, if you're going to... Yeah, which honestly, it makes that approach of free agency look all the more bad too. At the very least, you could have signed somebody at running back, because you literally have nobody at running back, and your plan of using Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook did absolutely nothing for you. Brock Purdy, the San Francisco 49ers quarterback, outran both of your running backs. That's just embarrassing right there. Then we move on to the NFC North, which has the Vikings and the Bears. And for the Bears, all the momentum that this team had entering the bye week, yeah, that's gone now. The Bears had an extra week to prepare for the Commanders, but it didn't look like it on Sunday. Caleb Williams reverted to the struggling rookie that we saw earlier this season. Chicago's defense had no answer for Jaden Daniels and the Washington offense. Even with Williams not playing on a high level, the Bears still found some success running the ball, and I think that's going to be the key for them going forward, is to lean on DeAndre Swift. I will give credit to Caleb, though. He bounced back in a big way towards the end of the game and played some better football, but it just wasn't enough in the end, especially when your defensive back is too busy taunting the fans and not focused on his assignments. And for the Vikings, it looks like some of the shine has come off this team. After peeling off 5 wins in as many games to open the season, the Vikings have now dropped 2 straight games. Sam Darnold has targeted Justin Jefferson to the point that it might actually be hurting the Vikings. As great as he is, Minnesota struggled offensively with almost half of Darnold's attempts and passing yards going his way. Jordan Addison's there. T.J. Hawkinson's coming back. We got some other talent here. Let's use them. The biggest issue, however, remains the leaky pass defense, which the Vikings apparently do have the worst pass defense in the NFC, which I did not know that, but I know that now. The defense has certainly taken a step back the past couple of weeks, and I think that's a big reason why they have lost. The offense also not playing as well either, too. So, unfortunately, solid start to the season for the Vikings, but they've dealt with a couple setbacks. How will they respond going forward? NFC South, a couple representatives this week. We have the Buccaneers and the Saints. And for the Saints, this team has played well enough to remain relevant in NFC South in previous seasons. That is no longer the case this season because they just have too many injuries and too little talent to salvage this season. Even in the perennial winnable NFC South, New Orleans is cruising towards irrelevance. This isn't the worst team in the NFL, but it's trending towards the bottom. And the powerhouse that New Orleans appeared to be during its 2-0 start doesn't look like it's going to make a return. Derek Carr's going to make a return. Will it save the team? Maybe, maybe not. For the Buccaneers, well, they are amid a tough stretch at the moment, and things aren't going to get any easier for them. After losing to the Falcons on Sunday, they've now dropped 2 straight to the Falcons, getting swept, and probably losing the NFC South while they're at it. And also they're going to have to continue to play without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Evans and Godwin have been the lifeblood of the Buccaneers since they were first paired together back in 2017. However, Mayfield showed that he can still keep this offense going and that the team is still competitive even without them in the lineup. They're not going to get Godwin back this season, but they will get Evans back at some point. But hopefully by then but even without them, like I said, it's still a competitive team. And then in the NFC West, we have a lone representative, the Seattle Seahawks, and this team will probably want to forget Week 8 even happened. This is the team without an identity, and first-year head coach Mike O'Donnell, he knows it. Running backs Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet combined for 12 carries against Buffalo. Those are a couple talented ball carriers, so Seattle should probably try to figure out a use for them. Ultimately, they just never really got going against the Bills. It was just a rough game all around and just weren't able to do much of anything, and that's kind of been the story for this team. They got off to a bit of a hot start, and then they've kind of been struggling since then. So with that, we move to the division representatives. We have a fatal four-way this week, and first time I've seen one of these in a while. So we have the Cowboys in the East, the Bears in the North, the Saints in the South, and the Seahawks in the West. And of these four teams, who's representing the NFC? Who's the worst team in the NFC this week? Well, you probably already know just looking at these four that it's the New Orleans Saints. This is the worst team in the NFC. Like I said earlier, good news they're getting Derek Carr back, but again, it might be too little too late. So now before we get to this week's team, we have the recap here. As you can see, we had the Panthers, who went back to Bryce Young and ultimately didn't really change much of anything. The Giants, had a rough loss against the Steelers, and they're still sticking with Daniel Jones because what else are they supposed to do? The Titans, bad loss to the Lions right there, got beat badly too. I mean, the Lions didn't have to do anything on offense. That's how you know how bad it was. The Jaguars losing not only that game to the Packers, but also losing a couple of other receivers, one for the season and Christian Kirk, and one for the time temporarily, that being Brian Thomas. So those are tough losses right there. The Patriots, Drake May unfortunately took a head injury in that game. They got the win, but they lost their quarterback in the process, so hopefully he won't be out too long for them. The Browns, hey, congrats, you got to win. Jameis Winston injected some life into this team, but it's not going to save them. It's not. And then the Raiders, another loss this week as well too, just can't get out of their own way. So with that, we move on to this week's team. As you'll recall, the AFC representative being the Jets and the NFC representative being the Saints. Between those two teams, who is the Week 8 team? Well, between those two teams, I went with the New York Jets. So tough choice here, but the AFC has honestly looked like the inferior, has looked like the worst conference this season compared to the NFC. So I went back to the AFC again and went with the Jets. Now, they've already fired their head coach. So that one's already taken care of. But does it stop there? This season is already shaping up to be a losing season. So does it stop with Robert Saleh? I don't think so. I think Joe Douglas, the general manager, as I talked about earlier, I think he goes out the door as well too. And then the Jets just bring in a new coaching staff, a new front office, and then try again with Aaron Rodgers and see if that works. Will it? Probably not, because at this point, Rodgers just looks like a washed-up quarterback. And with that, that does it for this episode of Throwing in the Towel. Like I said at the top, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.